It's now been 1 year since the PowKiddy RGB30 originally released, so in this video I want to go over the RGB30 more generally, and especially focus on some changes that have taken place since the original reviews started releasing about 1 year ago. And the RGB30 actually had a big price drop recently, so if you decide to buy it, I'd really appreciate it if you use that link down below in the description. It'll be an affiliate link, it comes at no extra cost to you, but it helps support the channel when you use them. So now getting the RGB30 out of the standard plain PowKiddy box, you can see that I decided to go for the yellow color. There's been a lot of new color additions actually, such as purple or green. We have the yellow here as well, and I think they add a really fun look to an already unique handheld, so those are definitely welcomed additions. You can see you don't get too much with the handheld, you just get the manual, the charger, the handheld of course, and then that's it. You shouldn't really expect too much with a cheaper handheld like this. So just for a general overview, we probably have the biggest selling point of this handheld, the 4-inch 720 by 720 screen. We of course have two analog sticks, a D-pad, our ABXY buttons, start and select, and then up top we have our inline shoulder and triggers, and we have our volume buttons, which are actually reversed from the standard, so you might find yourself actually increasing the volume or decreasing it when you mean to do the opposite, so that might take a bit of getting used to. And then we have our mini HDMI out port, so you can connect it to your TV, your monitor, and this handheld does have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you can connect a Bluetooth controller. And then we have our power and restart buttons over there. And then on the bottom we have our two micro SD card slots, two USB-C ports, and a headphone jack. And on the sides and the back we have nothing except for here on the back we have this PowKiddy sticker, which I have been wanting to take off, but I'm kind of afraid of all that sticker goo, and I don't really want to have to deal with that right now, so I may have to wait a little bit, but yeah. And now turning it on, you can see that it comes with Gel OS, and Gel OS really is not missing anything that you'd need. There are other options, for example, you could use Arc OS or MinUI, and I believe there might be some others out there, but yeah, Gel OS for me is perfectly fine, and I think it looks really nice on here. So of course, it's just the standard, scrolling left to right, you have all of your consoles, open one, you have your games list, and then open up whichever game that you want, and then pressing the start button either on the main menu or in a console, you can access settings, for example, changing the brightness, changing music, sound settings, all that, or you can go into the individual console settings and change certain specifics like which core is being used or something like that. And like I said before, if you don't like Gel OS for whatever reason, there are other options out there, but for me, there's no issues. So now let's take a look at the emulation. The PowKiddy RGB30 comes with an RK3566, 1GB of RAM. So these are specs that you've seen before probably, and if you have seen them, you know how this emulation will work. There's going to be pretty much identical performance between this handheld and many others, but I'll go over it. So starting off, we have 8-bit and 16-bit era consoles. These are going to work perfectly fine. There's going to be no issues whatsoever. Everything up to the PlayStation 1, even playing PlayStation 1 at 2x resolution, will work for the vast majority of games. And this 720 by 720 screen will have a lot of benefits. For example, Game Boy Advance can do perfect 3x integer scaling if you're into that kind of stuff. Other handhelds like Game Boy Color fill out the screen really nice. So if you have an issue with black bars, a lot of these 4:3 consoles might be a problem for you because of course they're not 1-to-1 and you're going to be getting some black bars. There are some tricks you can do, for example going into the settings and changing the scaling to 8:7 instead of 4:3, and with that the stretching isn't too obvious and it really fills out the screen and looks nice, so that is an option if you're interested in that. So like I said, PS1 and everything below it will run perfectly fine. We also have Vertical Arcade and Nintendo DS, which take advantage of this bigger screen and look really nice on here compared to some smaller 4:3 screens. You have huge black bars on the sides. With a Nintendo DS and Vertical Arcade, it's not the case as much. Of course, it's not perfect, but you make a lot more use of the screen here, and I found myself playing way more Vertical Arcade games on here than I ever would on some other handheld. It's not something I usually pay too much attention to, but I found them to be really good on here, and the Nintendo DS as well is really good. And in my opinion, both views that you might want to use on DS look great. You have the two screen mode where you have the top and the bottom screen stacked, showing at the same time how the DS is actually supposed to be played. Of course, you don't have a touchscreen, so you have to use an analog stick to emulate the stylus, but still, it can be played that way and I think looks pretty good. And using the single screen view, especially using the HD graphics setting, looks really nice. So all of what I just mentioned runs great. So now let's get into some stuff that's a bit harder and you might encounter some problems with. So these are all going to be N64, Dreamcast, PSP, and Saturn. So I'm going to go over these individually. I would say for most of them though, just broadly, you'll be able to play a decent percentage of the games, but some of the harder to run stuff isn't going to be great. You'll encounter some slowdown here and there with these harder games. The games that I'm not considering playable on all of these that I just mentioned could range from some slowdown here and there to completely unplayable, crashing, just horrible. So starting off, I'll go with the N64. Most N64 will be pretty good, but of course there is a subset of games, like I said, maybe a fourth or so, that won't be playable at all and are not going to be enjoyable for you to even try. try. It's a similar thing with Dreamcast. I would say a similar amount, maybe 3/4 or so will be playable, and then there's going to be a decent chunk of harder to run games that will not be playable at all, and you should not even try. And when it comes to Saturn, I actually haven't had a lot of luck here. As you can see, the performance is really bad, and from what I understand, this is an issue right now with Gel OS on the RGB30. I've seen other people mention this problem, and they say that if you switch over to the newest version of Arc OS, you actually can get some improvement. I haven't done a whole lot of messing around, so definitely there could be something that you could do to get improved performance on Saturn here on the RGB30 and Gel OS. I'm not saying there's not, I'm just saying so far I haven't found it. Tweaking the settings, changing the emulator used, frame skip, all that kind of stuff, I haven't got any significant improvements yet. Other people have brought the issue up as well, and it's kind of strange because when it first dropped, I saw many people getting good performance on Gel OS. So likely you can get better performance on Saturn, but with a stock experience, it doesn't seem to be super great. And then we have PSP, which is going to be a bit worse. Already there's going to be huge black bars, like I've already mentioned, because it's a 16:9 console on a 1:1 screen, so it's going to be pretty drastic. But even with that, some of the easier to run and mid-tier games will work on here. Using some frame skip, you can try to venture out of that a bit, but even using frame skip, there's going to be a lot of PSP games that are unplayable on the RGB30. And of course, we have our two analog sticks on here, which are nice for all these aforementioned systems. Some people have complained about them being a bit more sensitive than they'd like. I do understand where that's coming from, but personally, I haven't found them to be so bad that I haven't wanted to play a game with them. And for a lot of games you're going to be playing on here anyway, you're not going to be using the analog sticks. For example, a lot of people love playing Pico 8 here on the RGB30 because that's a 1:1 system, and this is a 1:1 screen. So Pico 8 really looks nice on here. The stock card doesn't come with any dodgy Pico 8 games like other brands might include. But yeah, if you want to buy the license yourself, and you can browse them on here using Wi-Fi, so it's a good experience for Pico 8, and you're probably not going to be using the analog stick much. So then we have the D-pad. There also have been some complaints about the D-pad as well, and those I think are more legitimate, at least for me, I've noticed it more. And that being that the D-pad is way more prone to accidental diagonals than many would like. It's not a big deal in a lot of games, but in certain games you will really notice it. PowKiddy has never been known for making great D-pads, but here on the RGB30, I do think the D-pad is probably one of its worst qualities. I'm not saying it's something that makes it not worth buying, because I still enjoy my RGB30. Most games I don't even notice it or think about it, but a certain subset of games you will notice it, and it can be annoying at times. By no means is it like a horrible, unusable D-pad or anything, but it just definitely has room to improve, and there actually are some improvements people have done. For example, using a tape fix where you get a piece of electrical tape, cut it to a specific size, you need to open it up, put it under the D-pad, put the D-pad back in, and that can help. People have done other fixes for the controls in this handheld, like switching out the membranes here with Ambernic membranes. I haven't done that yet, so I'm not going to give recommendations as to which ones to buy, maybe even switch out between your handheld and another Ambernic one. So there's any number of things you can do to try to improve them a bit, but I don't think the controls are super great. I haven't noticed anything bad with the ABXY buttons or the shoulders and triggers, besides them being stacked. I don't really mind it a whole lot, but I know that does annoy some people. So overall with the controls, I don't think they're so bad that I wouldn't recommend buying the handheld because of them, but they are noticeably iffy, and I think it's worth mentioning at least. And when it comes to the build quality, I would say the build quality is okay. Certainly, like I said with the D-pad, also PowKiddy is known for not having the best build quality. I think the build quality on the RGB30 is good enough, especially now that it has a lowered price, and I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. I don't expect amazing build quality here, and I think for the price, PowKiddy delivered, and it's acceptable. So it doesn't feel the most premium, but it doesn't feel super cheap. It doesn't feel like a toy or anything. I think it's nice enough feeling. And when it comes to the battery, the RGB30 comes with a 4100 milliamp hour battery. It's generally said, and I think this is probably pretty accurate, to have about 6 hours of battery life. It could go up or down a bit depending on what you're playing, brightness, all that kind of usual stuff, but I think it's fair to say 6 hours is about right. Some people have had some issues with the batteries actually, the issues being that it drains faster than you'd expect, not only while it's on, but actually while it's off also. Some people have turned it off, put it on their shelf or whatever, picked it back up a day or so later, and it's drained way more than they'd expect. And I believe I actually did experience it draining a bit faster than I'd think when it was off when I first bought it, but lately I haven't noticed that. And I've seen some people that have brought this issue up since it originally came out, mentioning unplugging the battery and plugging it back in, and then that helping them. I have no experience doing that, but I have heard some people say that fixed the issue for them. So the issues aren't universal. Just since it came out, I have seen some people mention that, so I want to bring some updates that might not have been present in the original reviews. So now getting into the price, talking about some competitors, I'll start off by saying that I bought my RGB30 here on AliExpress a few weeks back for about $55 in total, and that was during one of AliExpress's is pretty much monthly sales they have, with probably a few dollars off with a coupon, and you can get that deal pretty frequently. And I even see right now there's not one of the monthly sales going on AliExpress, and there is a listing for an RGB30 for $55, and they're not always that cheap. Sometimes you might find them for like $63 or so on AliExpress, on the upper end maybe $65, but still that's quite a drop from the original $90 that the RGB30 was listed at. And like I said, I think you can usually get them for about $55 on AliExpress after coupons or just on sale otherwise. Make sure you're using reputable sellers. I'll put a link down below in the description to the cheapest legit listing I can find. It'll be an affiliate link and comes at no extra cost to you to use, but if you use it, it supports my channel, and I'd really appreciate it if you buy it through that link if you do. So you can now get the RGB30 for very cheap. And I also did want to bring up some considerations of RGB30 alternatives, because after the RGB30 release, there have been some devices that were inspired by it, by PowKiddy and by other brands, so I wanted to bring those up for your consideration at least. So PowKiddy came out with the RGB20 SX, which is essentially an RGB30 but vertical. It has, from what I understand, the same control issues, it has the same screen, the same specs, it's just vertical. And some people have brought up it being weirdly tall because it's a vertical handheld with that big screen up top, so yeah, there is that. I personally think the RGB30 looks a lot cooler, but if you're someone that likes vertical handhelds, it might be at least worth taking a look at. There have been some other clones, for example the R40S, which is a similar 4-inch 1:1 screen, but it did get pretty poor reviews and I wouldn't recommend. There's also rumors about an R46S, which is going to be, from what I understand, also an RK3566 4-inch screen. I don't know about the resolution. It's going to be a clone handheld here, probably trying to mimic the RGB30 as much as they can. It's not out yet, it's just rumored. There have been some photos of it, but I'm not going to speak to that because it's not out yet and I have no idea about it. There's also rumors of Ambernet coming out with a similar RG40XX Cube handheld. I've seen no official confirmation to that whatsoever, so just keep in mind other people might be putting out handhelds that are similar to the RGB30, but right now I think in this price point, not talking about some more expensive near $200 handhelds that might be similar, in this price range I still think the RGB30 is king for now, but that could change in the future. So all in all, I would still recommend the PowKiddy RGB30 after 1 year. I think it's a good handheld. It certainly has some shortcomings, but now, especially with its price drop, I would be fine recommending it. If it was still around $90, I think I would find it a lot more iffy and just be like, I mean, it has problems, it's $90. There's a lot that you can get for around $100 or $120 that's much better than the RGB30 in terms of performance. So yeah, I wouldn't really think for $90 it's the best option, but now for about $55, $65, I do think it's a lot more justifiable in my opinion. So I still think it's good after 1 year. I'm still enjoying mine. So yeah, once again, if you're interested in the handheld, I put a link down below in the description for you to check out. It's an affiliate link. If you decide to buy it, I'd appreciate it if you use that. It helps support the channel. And if you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.